Before the show starts, again, just like to say a big thank you to the sponsors: Air Canada Cargo, ATC Aviation, Bombelli, Cool Dolly and Cool Storage Solution, Etihad Cargo, and Sarco Airport Equipment. Thank you all so much. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, here we are again, another session with regards to the Pharma Digital event, and got two great guests. I've got Fabrice Panza, who's the product manager of Cool Chain Solutions for Etihad. So Fabrice, welcome on board. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello indeed. And we've also got Terrence, who's the global pharma product manager for Kuehne Nagel. So Terrence, thank you also, sir.
Good morning.
Right, chaps. Now, just to get us warmed up and let everybody know who you are and what you do, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about your role and obviously, you know, how today's events or this last 7 or 8 months have mapped out your lives. So, Terrence, can we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the global pharma product manager for Air Logistics based in Schindellegi, Switzerland. It's my role and responsibility to work with the strategy of the air product, to make sure that we're looking at all quality management systems within the air product, and make sure that we're doing what is needed to ensure operational excellence for anything that we do. We are very involved from a company perspective in the COVID response. It's something that we do have a very clear task force within our company, and I'm one of the participants on that task force, where we're looking at how we work with carriers, how we communicate with carriers, how we will work with any of the manufacturers of the COVID vaccines, and also how we will work downstream to ensure that the patient gets the supply needed.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. And same question to you, Fabrice, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Well, it seems that Terrence and I, we do share the same, job description. As indeed, I'm doing exactly the same for the airline, for Etihad Cargo. So I'm globally responsible for cold chain, meaning both perishable and pharma, when it comes, of course, to development, business, commercial relationships. But I would say mainly from a compliancy point of view, we want to be sure that the products that we are designing are matching the requirements. So to do so, we went under CIB certification, which is one of the most important pillars for us over the last year. And we want to be sure that we understand the needs. So we are actively participating to associations such as IATA, Pharma.aero, Pharma Logistics Club, CCA, in which we believe in strong collaboration with all the stakeholders. And this collaboration is something that we do, I would say, from an external point of view, but also internally. So this summer, when we all were hearing, about this this COVID-19 vaccines program or solution, we also decided to create a joint task force internally to analyze all the possible scenarios. And definitely this is what we are doing since now 3 months, talking together, of course, designing process, and being sure that whatever the requirements are, we can share what we can do and sometimes what we can't do. So this is where the collaboration is important with all the stakeholders. So we definitely come with a solution. If it is not ours, it would be the one of any partner, such as active container supplier or packager, or a special, I would say, process of design that we have to put in place.
Very good, very good. Now, the objective of the exercise, guys, is, and there's been so much press now about, now that everybody is aware that the vaccines are starting to come like buses, and every Monday morning is a good news Monday now, as opposed to all the doom and gloom. Now, the media is starting to turn the not the argument or the debate, but the focus issue on the capability to get from freezer to arm. Okay, so we as a collaborative industry now, that the world's eyes are looking at us to see what we do. So it's so important that collectively we do things in a positive fashion and very, very effectively, and the capabilities are there. So let me ask you something now, and with that term from freezer to arm, before we get into the nitty-gritties of the vaccines, both of you have got huge experience in the cold chain and also with pharma distribution. So can I ask you firstly, whether it's CEIV or GDP, if you can just explain what that means for people that are listening in. So Terrence, the difference and what your organization's favor is, or why one, why not the other. So when we come to CIV and GDP, a little bit like two heavyweight boxers, which corner do you support?
I'll make it easy on you, Chris. The fact is, we believe in both. It is something that GDP, in terms of the World Health Organization, they do publish guidance, and it's good distribution practice guidance on how to move and transport pharmaceutical and healthcare products. So that is the industry that has the guidance that they're putting out there. And what CEIV is the arm of IATA that is working to ensure that the WHO GDP is put into practice into the industry. So that's where Fabrice and his team would get actively involved. That's where I get actively involved to make sure that our quality management systems are aligned with both the WHO GDP and also CEIV. So I believe both are very good. It's very beneficial for the industry. It's great from a ground handler perspective that we're getting ground handlers more actively involved as well. So I think the initiative in general is great, that we do have another body coming in and showing best practices out there.
Yeah, no, very good, very good. And I fully agree with that as well, Terrence. It's most important. Now, Fabrice, obviously from your perspective, you've got the carrier role, you've also got the ground handling agent role. So what's your feedback on that?
Yeah, once again, I'm sharing quite the same analysis as Terrence. I mean, we believe that from a regulation point of view, the more we are standardized, of course, the best and the most smoothly the shipment would go. What we believe also is interaction with all the stakeholders. So you're mentioning the airline and the ground handling agents, which are fundamental, of course, but part of the central, I would say, chain. Nevertheless, before and after the airport, a lot is happening also. So we are also pushing to raise the bar, I would say. So, and being sure that the complete lane is being covered from a certification point of view. As Terrence was saying, whether you are GDP compliant or CIV is quite the same. So at least we understand the same things, and we do talk the same language, whether you are a handler, an airline, a freight forwarder, a truck company, which is very important in this regard. We want to be sure that we are fully aligned, but furthermore, I would say it's a prerequisite. It's a basic even nowadays. If you've seen the huge increase of CIV certifications amongst the last 5 years, it's incredible. Yeah. I guess we're reaching 300 companies now worldwide. So it makes it very solid, I would say. And that's something very important, so that the interaction that we're having now and the discussion around the possible kind of flows we are talking about is from a GDP compliancy quality point of view being covered. And now we can focus on lane risk assessment, SOPs, specific requirements if needed, as you mentioned before. And that gives a very huge, I would say, and solid framework to work together.
Yeah, real quick, Chris, because I think the important thing here is it creates a common language. Yep. So this is where we collectively, along all the stakeholders, now have a common language that we are speaking competently to each other. It's increased the collaboration, which is the good news for this kind of a challenge. We are fully aligned from a stakeholder perspective. And I think that's where CEIV has really played its part. WHO GDP has been out there for a long time. But when we're talking about getting everybody upstream and downstream talking the same language, openly communicating, as Fabrice said, where we have gaps, capability gaps collectively. And then how do we fill those gaps? That's where I think the logistics industry is rising to the challenge because of these type of initiatives.
Yeah, I can remember when people were first talking about CEIV, and it was a great idea, and then people were talking about the money and the investment. But it's amazing now when you look back on the last 2 to 3 years, how the industry has developed. And like you said, it's created this common platform. And now everybody is reaping the rewards of that initial investment just at the right time. And that's a great confidence booster for the industry. I think it's amazing. Yeah. Now, another question for you. Now, when people from the outside, and they've started to learn a lot about, especially about cargo over this last particular year and how important it is, Now people are starting to think, oh, I wonder what's involved in this. And then they're getting surprised at how much is involved. So if you look at the complete supply chain or the community, you've got all these different elements of potential task force or coordination, whether it be from the carriers, the airports, ground handling agents, regulators, integrators, charter brokers, LCCs for PAX, PAX equipment with the Praters. You've got private aviation, you've got FBOs, last mile providers, temporary and second line facilities. You've got so many elements that have to be taken into this. And I see you smiling there, Terrence, because obviously from your perspective, you want to make sure that everything upstream and downstream meets the requirements of your customer. So are you doing anything different now within your own task force to take all of those players in the team who all play in different positions, but it's the success of the team that counts? Are you doing anything differently now?
I wouldn't say we're doing things differently, because we've had a risk-based culture within Kuehne and Nagel for quite some time, almost 10 years now. So from that perspective, I think what we're doing is we're adding more resources to it and maybe listening a little bit differently. Because you're right, there are so many different stakeholders that come into play. We've got different security requirements on these types of products that maybe we haven't had before, or it's not that common in some of the areas that the product will be shipped to. So I think we have to listen differently. We have to collaborate. And those are really the key things. We've talked more to our airline partners in the past 6 months than we have ever. And it's not that we didn't talk or communicate, but it's different types of communication taking place now because of all these things that were considered unknowns. Still, some things are unknowns, but we know it's out there. And we know that security and the level of communication is going to need to be increased dramatically.
Yeah, 100%. Now, you touched on something there, which Fabrice, from my time with Etihad and being in Abu Dhabi, I know security is, so important. But this product now throws a different type of security focus up.
Well, it depends. Now we're going more into details. I mean, it depends on which kind of vaccine we are talking about. As we were saying quite briefly, the requirements may not be the same depending on which kind of vaccine you are. The requirements in terms, of temperature ranges, for instance. But whatever the kind would be, the security is still the same. I mean, it would be of a higher importance for whatever reason. In that case, whatever the vaccine would be, the security would be the same with a high level. So I'm not sure about your question, I would say.
No, it's okay.
It's Fabrice, we're at the point we don't know what we don't know yet.
Yes.
Because is the airport security good enough in all areas? Will there have to be a different layered security approach? These are the things that we're just starting to take the journey and understanding that, because there may be local requirements in certain countries where maybe a military gets involved, maybe local authorities get involved. And it could be creating perimeters around airports, could be creating perimeters inside airports. We don't know that, but it's something that we expect to have a layered security approach from end to end, including the airport. So I think, in fairness to Fabrice, it's not been exposed just yet exactly what the requirements will be.
Yeah, no, I just apologize there, Fabrice. What I was also getting at is there's going to be people now that are involved in this particular logistics chain that have never been exposed to, to such scrutiny and such importance. Even the last mile, transportation and storage, and whether it goes to local, whether it's sports centers, GP areas, etc. This is going to make everybody now be aware of how effective the entire logistics chain can be.
I do understand now a bit more what you mentioned, but what I would like to say then, and maybe Terrence will join me on that, is that, well, of course, what is at stake is human life. We don't deny that. We are giving high importance of this vaccine because we are worldwide into a global crisis. So that's why I guess the attention is so high. But if you compare it, and allow me this comparison, we are moving vaccines, insulin, very high sensitive temperature products since years, whether am I Etihad Cargo or Kuehne Nagel. And with all due respect, of course, what we did is exactly the same from a security point of view of what is going to happen. We are already, I would say, shipping very high value shipments since years with a high level of security and attention. And of course, these vaccines are part of them. This is what a bit I was trying to explain just before. So what is really changing, I would say, is more the external attention. Now, also to get a bit more into what you were saying regarding, Terrence, what you were saying regarding the interaction with local government, it's true that maybe for these campaigns, and my understanding is that it will last during a long period of time. Of course, you will need strong coordination, as you were mentioning, on the first and last mile. It's true, but it's also linked to the fact that maybe for this time we would have to handle higher scale of volume. I mean, the volumes would be bigger. But from a process point of view, from a risk analysis point of view, we are into the same kind of schema of nowadays shipping vaccines or insulin, whether as shipper pallets or with active containers.
Okay, yeah, very good, very clear. And thanks for putting that in perspective. Really appreciate it, Fabrice. Now, another area that's affecting us as a community is now with the decline in passenger transportation and the reduction in capacity because of so many passenger aircraft being on the ground. We've got a bit of a conundrum now where everybody's talking about these huge volumes of vaccines and how many freighters it's going to take and over what period of time. And then you've got a reduction in capacity, and then you've still got the basic supply chain that needs to keep rolling. So that balance, how is that being addressed, from your perspective, Terrence?
So you use the term conundrum, and I think it's more of an opportunity, because this is where the discussions we've been having with the airline carriers and Etihad, and as an example, there's a level of flexibility that they're offering us right now. And they're talking about taking aircraft that have been parked in the desert, putting them back into redeploying these aircraft, looking at different creative ways to increase dry ice amounts. It's really an opportunity for the logistics industry to step up, and that's what's happening. The discussions are there. We just need to look at where we have the volumes, where we have the critical mass, and make sure that we're putting the right capacity in the right markets. But the airline carriers have been fantastic in their response, the communication with us. We know exactly how long it takes to get an aircraft redeployed. So, I see it as a tremendous opportunity versus a conundrum. So maybe out of a conundrum comes the opportunity. But I'm really pleased at the discussions we've been having with our preferred carriers. It's been really fantastic.
No, that's also good to hear, and that's the way it should be. And Fabrice, obviously, I spent many a happy year at Etihad. I know how much effort goes into it, and I know exactly how flexible you're going to be. And obviously, Martin Drew coming back on board again. That's also, in my opinion, very good news. So, from your perspective, I'm pretty sure you're pulling out all the stops.
Absolutely, and I would say it's a momentum where internally we see that the interaction that we have between the passenger division and the cargo division is of course at stake, but also very strongly important. And I guess Terrence get it right. We are trying to be as adaptive as we can.
Yep, no, it's very good. Now, can I ask you another thing, gents? Now, it's just, and this is just a personal opinion of mine. Airports, okay. I've been a big believer. Airports should take a more overview. They should have more responsibility for their own ecosystem, and they should try and create a different dimension, and let everybody know who's part of that ecosystem. That airlines can fly in, they can fly off, but they can also fly away. Obviously, unless it's a major hub. Now, to do that, it needs everybody to pull together. And in the past, you've had very forward-thinking tenants of an airport, and then you've got problems with infrastructure and what have you. Now, are you seeing that there's a much more collaborative approach coming from airports for the community, rather than just what people considered that airports were focused on? And some people have said in the past, it's more retail based and the shopping based than it was infrastructure. Fabrice?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, but I would like just to make a general comment, which is more into a positive way to see it. If I take only pharmaceuticals, always take the 5 last years, just look on the association side, what happened. I mean, that's why I'm a true believer into the certification, whether it is CIV or GDP, because you have seen a huge increase in community, which was not the case. Take as example Brussels, Amsterdam, even Paris went into that, strong approach of getting all the people gathered together, but also working together. I'm not saying it's simple. It took time, but this is a reality. You look at all the initiatives on a worldwide scale for all the airports. It's amazing, really. So I would say that the implication of the airports is very strong, very high, and specifically for cargo. So I'm very confident in the future also that I would say this movement will continue on.
Very
good, very good. And Terrence?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nail right on the head, Fabrice, with talking about Brussels as kind of what we believe we will see more and more of moving forward. And airport authorities are having different discussions, even in the last year. They started to have discussions, and I think those discussions have accelerated quite a bit about how they can really create opportunities for the hub airports to really have a good throughput of pharmaceutical healthcare products and make sure it's protected. So again, I think Brussels was kind of the model. It's a small community, very close community, but it shows that it can be done across airlines, and it's a collaborative co-opetition, as we'll call it, that needs to take place for this industry to be successful.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. And luckily enough, I've had, pairing where airports have started to work with each other from different regions to learn and to gain. And I think that's such a great thing. It's been so positive. Now, let me ask you another thing. And Fabrice, if I can ask yourself, sir. Now, the first good bit of news was Pfizer. And then obviously came the challenge with the temperature criteria. Then the second bit of good news, Moderna, and then it was more of a realistic temperature. And now we've got Oxford, looking at regular containment. So the news is getting better. The efficacy is fantastic. So now this is all good news. Now, as far as self-controls and distribution, and people need to know about dry ice limitations and the effect of dry ice, etc. How do you think, or based on any risk review or review of processes, etc., how do you think that will be overcome, as it's distributed within major hubs? Because obviously it's got to get then from a hub to various regions. We're talking about AstraZeneca and Oxford with not for profit, so they're focusing on getting to the extremes, because at the end of the day we're all safe when we're all safe. So how are you seeing those distribution challenges coming up?
True. We are back to discussion that we had a few minutes ago, Chris, which is first we are making sure by talking, I would say, talking is not a simple word. Of course, it's a translation into process and documents that we are sharing with the industry. As an airline, what we want to do and what I want really to do is to be sure that the customer is aware of what I can do and what I can't do. This is what I was explaining about good distribution practice. It means in that case that we've been already sharing since months, I would say, our current capabilities, both from a station point of view, but also from an aircraft point of view, so that Pfizer knows also what is at stake if you're naming Pfizer or Moderna. So they know what is the limitation that we are facing, which is not the wish of the airline. It's like this. It's linked really to good reasons, which we can explain a bit later. And based on that, the packager is playing a very important role. When we don't have a solution, this is where I was saying just before, then we have to partner with the right supplier in that case. Would it be an active container, a hybrid container, or a passive ship of pallets? Most of the time, the customer, the pharma company will qualify this packaging. And this is where he plays a huge role, and we play a huge role by interacting in the requirements and the capabilities. And this is where we are. So if you take the Pfizer packaging. So what we understand is that it is going to be autonomous with a certain amount of dry ice, and that they are making the calculation based upon what is the current limitation into an aircraft, so that they can maximize also their flows. So that's just an illustration, because we're taking one example of one type of requirement, which is providing a minus 70 degrees for this particular vaccine. But it's not only the airline that is impacted, you know that, and it's also the end consumer, end customer, or end facility, which is at stake. So that really brings lots of changes also in the logistic aspects, which I'm not really part of as an airline. It's more the end facility or the consignee, which is also concerned by this.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, and obviously, you know, for people listening, most of them have got, you know, some industry experience, so they understand what dangerous goods are, what the regulations are, and why dry ice, you know, is an oxygen thief. So, you know, it can cause an awful lot of problems. They understand that. So from the front end, or from, you know, from downstream, you've got the relationship with yourself, Terrence, whereby you organize and make sure that the right commodity, the right packaging, the right conditions, the right limitations, etc., is then communicated to the airline and the handling agent, etc. And that's how the process goes. From a storage perspective, Terrence, are you looking at, and you spoke about, you know, having, you know, lane risk or risk issues. Are you looking at capabilities like that? So are you doing a sort of a validation exercise with the downstream process to make sure that all those particular steps have got a certain degree of accountability, rather than just responsible for delivering to the end location?
Yeah, absolutely. The risk assessment is done all the way throughout the process to where we hand over the product. So when we talk about the role of the carrier, they've got a very critical role to play, because it's not just about the amount of dry ice they can have on the aircraft. It's the fact, has someone already pre-booked that space or bought that dry ice allocation? And therefore, should we be looking at another aircraft? And I think that's going to be one of the key challenges here, is to make sure that we all have the visibility needed so that we're booking the right capacity in the right place. And then correspondingly, part of our risk analysis or risk discussions that we've had with the carriers, such as Etihad, is talking about what are the capabilities downstream to source and supply dry ice. Do you have any -20 storage conditions? Do we have any third parties? What do we have for contingency? Can we get, you know, ocean refrigerated containers that we can use for temporary storage? We also have to look at the customs clearance and say, are we going to get some type of a emergency type of clearance with local authorities, and then have that touch and literally move to the consumption point? So these are a lot of things and a lot of questions that we have to ask throughout the process, because again, getting to downstream where they do have the storage, if the ministries of health and the governments are arranging that, we're not going to be participating in that. If we've been asked at these destinations, whether it's a national government, whether it's local officials, to provide that level of storage, we are working closely with those officials. But I think, again, the airline and the communication process and the visibility is going to be key to all of this.
Yeah, no, 100%. And one of the things that you just touched on there about fast track customs clearance, which obviously is something that we would all like to see more of anyhow, where it's risk based. Now, with that fast track customs clearance comes a little downside, and people are already started to talk about so many good things that are happening now, and positivity, and at last the light at the end of the tunnel, you know, seems to be getting brighter, and it's not a train coming towards us. With that positivity, there's also a reality check that, you know, there could be some fake vaccines, fake equipment, etc. So when you then speed up a clearance process, you've got challenges there. Fabrice, you know, have you heard, or is that part of the mitigation consideration? You know, the type of documentation and pre-clearance.
Yeah, so you're touching a sensitive point, but yes, generally you have already in place first risk analysis, and I guess Terrence get it right also by describing it, that you see that live we are also aligned and that we're talking the same vocabulary. That's important. Then when it comes to that kind of organization with fast track, as you were mentioning, first, it's a good point. I mean, one of the aim is to mitigate the effects of having multiple handover points. You know, the chain is composed of lots of breaks, and typically from a compliance, but also risk analysis point of view, this is where we put specific measures, mitigation measure. What is the plan B if plan A is not working? But I would say around that, what is also at stake is the integrity of the flow. Of course, I would say the drug itself or the vaccine itself, but also the documentation part. And I guess that in that regard, digital is really playing a huge role. That's to respond to your first question. So what are the mitigation effects? Digitalization, pre-clearance, which is performed by the airlines and by the industry since years through e-airway, but also trying to have the customs around the table, which is happening on certain countries, by the way. Also from a digital point of view is really giving a good, I would say, security aspect. Then back to the shipment itself, it depends on the equipment you would use, of course. And that's why, for instance, active, hybrid, container are sealed, for instance. In addition to that, what we as an industry are adding are active trackers. You know, these active devices, they are capable of showing location, temperature, and prove from an evidence point of view, data logging point of view, that everything went smoothly from the temperature requirements, but also integrity requirements. So this is the mix of these three types of solutions that are giving, I would say, the insurance that this fast track solution, which is certainly going to be more and more the case, is being respected.
Yeah, no, it's so important. And Terrence, from your perspective, that tracking of the shipment from origin to, you know, final destination, and I dare say now it's going to be even more important that it, you know, because we're going from freezer to arm, that tracking length and that tracking scrutiny is going to be even more important. Do you just want to explain a little bit about the types of tracking that you guys encourage and support?
So we do also look at Internet of Things devices, so IoT devices that can track biometrics. So I think this is part of the layered security approach that we're going to be looking at, because IoT devices will have a play. It will not only help us to tell the temperature, but we may want to utilize other functions, shock, vibration. We may want to look at acceleration. We may want to look at light sensitivity for certain things. So I think, yes, this is something where we're going to be employing as much technology as possible for the layered security approach. And we fully expect that our customers will as well. So
yeah, no, and it's something that everybody, well, for me, I'm an old, you know what I mean? I'm an old dog now. All right. But one of the things that always drove me crazy was the paperwork. You know, why in so many other parts of society, you don't have to worry about it. And I keep thinking, what on earth are we doing? Cutting copies from the blues to the greens of finance on the airway bill, all that used to drive me crazy, still does. But now, if anything is going to be the impetus to change, it's this sanitization and hygiene. You know, why do you have so many people and touch points? So now, hopefully, we can get rid of the paperwork. But the other good thing that's speeding things up is the digitization, and how I think in the last, everybody complains, oh, everything's too slow. And each decade you look at your successes and your frustrations. But I think now the industry has learnt more and done more in 1 year probably than in a decade. And that's not a bad thing.
It's not I think we've had to look at it differently. So I think, again, the communication has increased dramatically between all the stakeholders. So I just think you're looking at people responding to a global crisis, and it's what we as humans do best. We step up and we do what we have to do. Yeah,
and for Fabrice, looking at the way things are going, and what you just said there, Terrence, when people become people and they show a certain degree of care, and sometimes it's forced on us for the wrong reasons, but we do respond in such a positive way. And this industry, our industry, is so agile, it's so resilient, it's incredible. And now, as we move forward, again, touching wood, I hope that, some of the legacy that we've had of waste and blockers and bureaucracy and admin, you look at how quickly the industry has been able to support the entire world with regard to supply chain. It's a very positive thing for the future.
I couldn't agree more. Chris. I've been working for airlines since 22 years now. I'm into cargo division since 12 years. And once again, in 5 to 7 years, that's incredible on how, I would say, of course, resilient is a word, but also on how better efficiency is at stake now through all the channels that we were discussing. But the most important, and you mentioned that both Terrence and you, Chris, is about people. It's about interaction that we have on a day-to-day basis. It's about, being sure that the awareness level is really understood by everyone. And nowadays, I would say that the interaction, not only within the cargo division, but within the airline also, is really at stake when it comes to safety, wellness, health, and the concerns. You can see that, I would say, just by opening the newspaper or just by watching TV. So that's also the reason why it goes so fast.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And something that, everybody who's within the industry is aware of, whenever you have anything to do with pharma, you normally have a pharma team, a pharma group, a team of pharma specialists, etc. And they get trained to a very, very high level, and they're very, very effective. It's almost like creating a group of specialists within the overall aviation industry. Yeah. Now, with everything that's happening now, and so many different people now coming in contact with this important vaccine challenge, the level of training and the leadership, and we talk about, SMS in the workplace and human factors. Again, it's just my opinion. I think that needs to be different now, because you've got so many people with anxieties, not knowing whether they're keeping their job, what's happening with their partners, what's happening with their children, all the fears, etc., being frontline workers. There's so much pressures now on people that the type of leadership to be able to work with people working at home, working on site, understanding the difficulties, and more importantly now, understanding what it means if there's any spoilage of any of these vaccines, because it will be for the entire industry. So that level of newly focusing leadership and training, I'm sure that's something that you're both also looking at and considering as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. I mean, in addition to what you're saying, Chris, I mean, both Terrence and I are part of what we call COVID-19 workforce, or I don't know what you call it, a task force, but it's all about team. Huh? I mean, we are gathering internally around this team, lots of people from different horizons. We are all part of cargo, for instance, but yep. I can tell you that the passenger division is also implied. And I would say that I found over the last months that the implication from a team point of view is exceptional. And the interaction that we have internally is really going the right direction, so that we feel that, I mean, every concern we may have, we can address it immediately. And there is a level of responsiveness maybe that is higher than the past. That's true, because everyone feels concerned as an individual, I would say. Yeah. So that plays a role into that. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think part of the outputs of the task forces or workforces is we're seeing different levels of workers needed in some areas. So I think to make people feel a little bit more at ease, these are trained professionals that we have, both companies, but we're also bringing in additional resources and making sure we treat them differently and have them look differently at what we consider to be a life-saving product out there, world life-saving product. So we are putting more resources to it. We've got, along with some of our customers, hypercare teams, which will be communicating extensively. They will be looking at full-on monitoring of real-time situations, not only using IoT devices, but also looking at pestilential situations, political, economic, social, strikes, things like that, and making sure that we can adapt and cover everything needed so that we don't have any bottlenecks or hiccups at certain critical control points. So I think, again, as we talk with our workforces, task forces, these are the kind of innovations coming out of this that really are showing that we collectively, Etihad, Kuehne, Nagel, some of the other forwarders as well, they're really doing their part in adding resources to make sure that things go as well as possible.
Yeah, no, I think it's for me personally, when I speak and see two guys like yourselves, so confident and so focused, it's really, really encouraging. It's not surprising because I've been in the industry and you guys are replicated through lots of the organizations, but it's so good to see. And it's also good to see that people are focusing an awful lot more on risk assessment and mitigations. And you spoke about social and economic influences that could happen, but also infrastructure, like electricity cuts or even vehicles that break down, or the maintenance. So all these things are there to make sure that we limit as much negative influence as possible, which is just fantastic. I think it's encouraging now for everybody. And, the amount of information that goes out collectively and positively is going to make such a difference. On that, just before we come to the end of the podcast, gents, if I was to ask you both, and if you were to be able to wave a magic wand, what would you love to see happen or love to see continue?
Fabrice, you, me?
Okay, shall I start? Not an easy one. No, I guess that what is a bit, I want to be positive, but in the same time, realistic. From a requirement point of view, it is high importance to be able just to anticipate the volumes from an origin and destination point of view. This is still for the moment not unclear, but not decided, and we understand why. In terms of hope, of course, I would like this level of uncertainty, which is normal at the moment talking, because the vaccines are not still qualified. So we are still preparing into these scenarios where we would see something, of course, getting fast. We want to have that kind, of reactive reaction, I would say, which is going to happen. But we want to be sure also that, the requirements in terms of temperature ranges and the volumes that are at stake are the more, I would say, possibly clear, I would say. So I don't know, because your question is not that easy to respond specifically for that, I would say, sensitive topic, but that's a bit of what we could imagine as a wish.
Yep.
Now, from a realistic point of view, this is where with Terrence, I guess we agree. From a risk management point of view, this is where we get also prepared from a contingency point of view, so that we make sure we have the sufficient redundancy, whatever the scenario would be. And as we were both saying, from a purely capability point of view, we are also saying, okay, we can ship this amount of vaccines in that condition or these conditions. And I'm sure that from a logistic point of view, that would require some time. So maybe the management of the expectation should be there also. We can't, I will say, deliver the vaccines in one day. So this is where also that's important to have that kind of debate that we're having now, but also trying to explain, just to give clarity on what could be unclear for the people who are working outside the logistics. So that could be my second, I would say, in a way, wish. And this is also what's happening when you look at every media is talking about the vaccines.
Yeah.
So at least we can give the best explanation also, and I guess that creates the right transparency and so the right trust in the system, in the logistics and the airline transportation.
Yeah, and also knowing how to combine and make ready all the storage facilities that may or may not be required wherever the locations are.
Which kind of leads me to where I would like to take it, and make sure that, because we have those limitations, I would like to see as much as possible that we have an equitable distribution of vaccine to not only first world countries, but also low middle income countries. So that's what I would like to see, and make sure that we are taking the human aspect of this into consideration. This is where Etihad, other airline partners will really provide the help, because some of these areas are hard to get to. And it requires very specialized types of routings. Maybe like we talked about the PAX freighters, maybe even some areas will have to utilize PAX freighters. But that's really what I would like to see. And what I would like to continue is we've had an increased level of communication and conversation with governments and NGOs, non-government organizations that has really, it's nothing like I've ever seen. And it's been a level of collaboration, communication. I would love to continue to see this, because this should be the way that we model future pandemic responses. Knock on wood that we don't have these, but being again pragmatic, we have to find a way to respond better. And I think this is the opportunity for us to continue that level of collaboration moving forward.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Gentlemen, we've come to the end of the time. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to you. And from me personally, you know, to see such focus, engagement, enthusiasm and positivity, as well as organisation and reality with some risk involved, those are the ingredients that we need now moving forward. And long may these Mondays be continually positive. So I'm looking forward to next month already. Fabrice, Terrence, thank you so much, gents. Really appreciate it. Good luck with everything. And good luck with both your organisations. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers. Bye-bye.